Okay, so welcome everybody to the English part of the feed value webinar. So my name is Marketta Rinne, and I have prepared this presentation together with my colleague Kaisa Kuoppala, and we give an overview of the feed evaluation work in Finland. So we do this work in Luke, Natural Resources Institute Finland, and it's part of the statutory services of Luke, which cover several different types of activities, and this feed evaluation work is one of them. And the mandate for us to do this work is based on national legislation. So according to the Finnish feed law, the energy and protein values of feed materials and feed mixtures must be based on criteria published by Luke, unless the legislation of European Union states otherwise, and that's not the case in most cases. There's one exception of the poultry energy values. And the criteria include the equations with their default values, how to calculate the feed values, and the digestibility coefficients are published in feed tables. And for ruminants, it also covers the effective protein degradability in the rumen. There's a standing committee for feed evaluation that supports the work, which has members from Luke and University of Helsinki as experts, and then also Finnish Food Authority and the Ministry of Agriculture and Forestry is included. And the operative team at Luke includes me, Kaisa Kuoppala, and Jenni Mattulainen. You see our pictures there. So determining the feed values is the cornerstone of systematic animal science and rational practical feeding, and planning of balanced and cost-effective diets for different animal species and production phases is the aim, and these feed values are required for that. The systematic feed evaluation work has started already in 1800s, but the systems develop continuously, and there has been active development of the feed evaluation all the time. The central objective of feed tables is to present reliable feed values so that they describe the relative differences of the feeds in terms of their production impact. It's kind of like a common currency so that we can compare different feeds directly with each other. And the feed evaluation work covers the most important livestock species, cattle, small ruminants, pigs, and poultry. Here is give some overview of the feed use in Finland. This is the total amount of feed used for different types of livestock production presented here. The yellow bars are cereals, green is forages, and it's clear that, of course, they are used to a great extent in Finland because our livestock production is quite heavily dominated by cattle. And then the light blue is protein feeds. So this gives an overview of the different feed use in Finland. The feed evaluation system has different parts, and the two main parts are feed tables and the feeding recommendations. And the feed tables present the values of reference feeds. So then the feed values are calculated based on equations that define how the energy and protein values are calculated for different feeds. And then based on the composition of typical reference feeds, then these feed values have been calculated for the reference feeds, and that forms the feed tables. And then feeding recommendations describe how much energy and protein the different animal groups require in different phases of their production. And it's obvious that the particular feed values must be used together with feed recommendations that are created together using the same systems, because otherwise it will get into a mess. And this figure here shows the different types of energy that a feed contains, and the gross energy is the total energy that a unit of feed contains, but part of it will not be digested when it goes through the digestive tract of the animal, so it's excreted as fecal energy. And then part of the digestible energy is lost in urine and in methane, particularly for ruminants from rumen fermentation, resulting in metabolizable energy. And then when it's used within the animal, there's a heat increment, which is also a loss of energy, resulting in net energy. And for example, if we would have a feed evaluation system that is giving the feed values in metabolizable energy, but then we would use feeding recommendations as net energy, then that would lead into totally wrong results. So then here is a little description about the evolution of the ruminant feed evaluation in Finland. And the system we are currently using was taken into use in 1995, and it's a metabolizable energy-based system, which at that time replaced the net energy-based system. And we still kept using feed units until 2010, when the metabolizable energy was presented simply as megajoules at that point. And for protein, we use a kind of a metabolizable protein-based system where we differentiate between the protein that is degraded and formed in the rumen, and then the bypass protein from undegradable feed protein. And this system was developed as a joint Nordic activity, and it was taken into use together with the energy system change in 1995. And until then, we used a system based on digestible crude protein for ruminants. And if you're interested in the history of development of feed evaluation systems in Nordic countries, there is this reference in the bottom of the page, which gives quite nice overview of the development in different countries. So we currently, this system that we are using in Finland, both for energy, particularly, it's not used. It's not used elsewhere. So when the other Nordic countries started using Norfor, Finland did not wish to participate in it because there were some inaccuracies in it that we didn't want to take that into use. And also the system that we are using in Finland is relatively simple, so-called factorial feed evaluation system, where feeds have like constant feed values and the associative effects that happen in the feeding situations, they are taken into account using correction factors. And although these complicated systems may in theory describe the feed digestion and the true supply of nutrients more correctly, defining all those steps and finding correct values for all of them may be so difficult that the final output is less accurate than in a simple system. Also, we live in quite exotic surroundings here in Finland, and the types of feeds we use differ from those commonly used globally. So then in our system, we have particularly paid attention to those feeds that are used in Finland. Also within animal nutrition, we are moving somehow away from this idea that animals have a kind of defined requirement of energy and nutrients at some point of their life, but it's rather than that, so that their output, whether it's milk or growth, it's kind of a response to the amount of energy and nutrients they have. So that's kind of important philosophical difference in thinking in current animal nutrition. But then if we move on to horses, the horses use the same energy values as ruminants. We know that the feeds are not digested quite so efficiently by horses, so they don't actually get so much energy from those feeds, but this is compensated by the feeding recommendations that are higher, so that then these values match with each other. And for horses, the protein value is described as digestible group protein. The feed evaluation system for pigs that we use since 2014 is based on French system, and the energy is presented as net energy, but different values are presented for young pigs and grown-up pigs, because young pigs don't digest fiber quite as efficiently as older ones, so then they get less energy from the same feed. The feed values are calculated using EvaPig program. And the development in the pig industry has been quite fast recently. The changes in the genetic background of pigs have taken place, and the feeding programs at farms are linked to contract production, so that the feeding recommendations presented by Luke are indicative. For poultry, there is a common EU definition how to calculate the metabolizable energy for them. But again, the feeding of poultry is conducted mainly in these contract programs, and the genetic lines that are used really govern the feeding program. So the feeding recommendations presented by Luke are indicative. But then let's move on and see how we can use the Finnish feed tables. And it's important, there's been some changes, so when you Google it, please be sure that you are using the latest version. So this maatalousinfo or portal pages are old, and you should preferably use this luke.fi-feed tables to get to the latest version of the information. So at this web page, you will find all this information that is provided in related to feed evaluation. So there are there's a link to the feed tables, which contains the reference feeds, their composition, and the feed values calculated for them based on that composition. And then there are dedicated pages for each species separately showing how to calculate the feed values and about the feeding recommendations. And then there's some additional information as well. So here is the page for ruminants. So you will land into this page, and there you can see on the left-hand side the different titles about requirements for different types of animals. This is an example of how the energy requirements are presented, in this case for dairy cow. And there are also examples how to calculate those yourself. In the feed tables, there's altogether 280 different reference feeds. And there's some difference about how they are shown for different animal species because of how they are conventionally used. And amino acid composition is presented for 72 feeds and mineral composition for 201 feeds. And then the chemical composition, the feeds are, in a way, they are the same for all the animal groups. So the basic composition is the same, including the dry matter, crude protein, crude fat, crude fiber, and ash concentration, and also for some feeds, the neutral detergent fiber, starch, and sugar concentration. And then there are these species-specific data that is presented only for certain animal group species, like, for example, D-value and effective protein degradability are only presented for ruminants, and ileal digestibility of amino acids for pigs. So this creates the own feed energy and protein values for each animal group. You can access the feed tables from this database that Luke is providing, and this same database actually provides a lot of different data from that Luke is providing as a statistics authority as well. And there's lots of, I would say, important and useful information related to livestock production as well, other than just these feed tables. So once you learn to use this database, it is quite handy and quite useful for many purposes. But now we are talking about feed tables, and you can find them here on this menu, and then you navigate through these pages by clicking on those links. And this is now the main page to look at the feeds. So then you need to choose which animal you are interested in, and now this is now the table for ruminants, and then you can search. All the feeds are listed here. You can look at all of them, or then if you know exactly which feed you are interested in, you can take a look at that separately, and then you can also choose which variables you want to look at. Like that. And in the footnotes, you can find, for example, the abbreviations, which may be helpful to interpret the results. And here is an example of a search that shows, in this case, different cereal grains and then their composition. And there's quite many functionalities in this service, so you can even create graphs out of these numbers, or what I have found quite useful is to save the results in an Excel file. And if you use this full screen option, then you get quite nice view for looking at it on the screen that shows more columns and also keeps the column heading row there visible in case you have a large table, so then it helps in screening. There is a hint if you are using the feed tables in a publication and you want to refer to it, how it could be formed. Of course, the final form depends on the requirements of the media you are using, but this example shows the most important parts that should be included there. And we highly recommend to use this short address luke.fi-feed tables instead of the one that you can copy from the web service, because first of all, this will always remain the same in spite there will be differences in the IT structure of Luke website, and also it's quite nicely understandable for the readers immediately when they see the link. The big news for today is that today we have published a report in Luke's series Natural Resources and Bioeconomy Studies with a number of 17. This is an edited book or report of the feed evaluation work, including the feed tables. And this hopefully helps to get an overview of the whole activity. And it has actually been used quite a lot because the previous report that was published 2015 has been downloaded for more than 20,000 times. For the English-speaking audience, I have a good news as well that we are going to publish an English version also later this year to share this information with the non-Finnish speakers as well. Still some points about what feed values are used for, and there's many purposes. And of course, planning and optimization of diets for livestock and pricing of the feeds are the most obvious ones. Also the feed values, the information of the composition of the feeds affects safety and health of the animals themselves, but also of people eating the animal products, because they affect also the composition of milk and meat and eggs. There's also important environmental aspects affected by how animals are fed, and also what kind of feeds are used, and the utilization of nutrients depends on information of the feeds and the use, how much animals require of different nutrients. Also, this information is used in many connections as default values in research projects and in modeling activities in different scenarios and excretion calculations and so on. We don't see at the present a big need to really change the feed evaluation systems, like the basis, how energy and protein values are calculated. But in the long term, that needs to be kept in mind. And for example, with that technology development, we may be able to change the ways we conduct feeding. Bigger development activities need to be projected and externally funded, but as part of the statutory service status, we maintain the current service and provide guidance and advice for users of it. It's important that we maintain skilled staff with this expertise related to feed evaluation work within Finland and Luke. And we need to follow the global trends in this area. We do maintain and update the feed materials list, for example, on a regular basis as data is generated. So that's actually one reason why it's good to use the online service, at least in the long run. Currently now the report provides the up-to-date information of this moment, but over the years, then there will be updates that are available from the online service only. But if there are research needs related to feed evaluation or feed values, so So we are open to cooperate, and that can be done as part of publicly funded project or as public-private partnership projects or as commissioned contract research if you have detailed research needs. In general, the feed value info is part of the bioeconomy in a wide sense. So there are lots of links to different branches, and this graph in the middle is an example of systems related to livestock manure, which is just, of course, one part of the whole picture. And I collected here on the sides some recent reports related to the feed evaluation, feed use, feed evaluation, and so on, as hints if you are interested to look more closely into the topic. The final slide, I want to remind you about how to reach the feed tables, and this service is indeed available in Finnish, Swedish, and English, and also the feedback address where you can reach us. So thank you.